try to tell history in an interesting way. And I write about cowboys and cows, and I write about skiing, and I write about women, and I just write about my life experiences, and I hope that people connect in some way each week with something I say. People go, you must make that stuff up in your columns. And I go, most people I write about are still alive. I couldn't get away with it. So,
when you go through town, do you see things like they were when you were in grade school? Do you know the names of the streets?
I think I was well into my 50s before I learned them. All right, Georgia, keep the archives humming. Most people don't know what this is. This is a mounting block specifically for mounting horses. Every house in town had one of these mounting blocks as a matter of hospitality, so the company could get on their horse and off and visit. And you'd pull up, get on your horse, and take off for wherever you were going. And now we can go downtown, have a beer at the Onion. I see the layers of history. If you go back, all of my great-grandfathers came here in the 1880s. So we're like a little tribe of original settlers, sort of. We grew up the hard way. One of my great-grandfathers came here in 1880, set up a dairy in Ashcroft. I can't think of a more miserable existence. But he seemed to like it for a while. My great-grandfather Stapleton came to Aspen in 1880, homesteaded the ranch where the airport's now located. That had to be a tough life, getting that ranch started. The Vagneurs and the Stapletons probably were the two largest families in the valley to start with. And then my dad and mom are from each family, so I got more relatives than anybody around here, I think. My ancestors married, had lots of kids, and worked the land for 65 years before I came along. I was born in 1946, fourth generation of Italian immigrants in Woody Creek. We didn't have, very much money, but we didn't acknowledge a lack of money either, because we had everything we needed. We ate well, and we certainly had good horses to ride. For most of the people that lived in Aspen at the time, life was geared towards survival. There were a lot of things that just kept people busy staying alive. And then, like an apparition from out of the storm, the image of my grandfather appeared in the rear door window, astride his big blue-roan cow horse. As he slid from the back of the beast, obviously disoriented, my Aunt Eileen ran out to help him into the house. Blood caked his nose and the corners of his mouth, and I could see where it had run down the front of his shirt. I hadn't thought the man to be mortal. Aspen was going through a lot of changes at the time. And we noticed, the outside world began to come in. With the Pepkes came and other people, and there started to be a demand to improve life. And instead of having running water 10 months out of the year, people thought they ought to be running water 12 months out of the year. Kind of the old-timers begrudgingly went along with those ideas. And as new as skiing was, I was impressed because my parents bought me skis, and they made sure I got on the ski hill. Later in life, I thought, wow, how lucky I was to have parents that would be that accepting of something new. The West End quiet is a bit stifling, unless you go by the park where 2 or 3 people might be having a lunchtime conversation. Walking these streets again after a long respite, I see my faded tread everywhere I look. Going to piano lessons, playing cowboys and Indians, walking girls home from school. Like everywhere else, it's a neighborhood, but one that perchance harkens back to Aspen roots more than any other. I'd spend the night in town with my grandmother. I'd wake up to the sounds of people in the kitchen, because they had a huge kitchen, and it was about the only warm room in the house, where they had a coal stove for a cook stove. And it was kind of the social center of town. It was better than the paper, because the paper only came out once a week in those days. More than once I heard Uncle Tom say, that goddamn Pepke, he's going to ruin this town. And, from Uncle Tom's perspective, he was right. Uncle Tom had spent his entire life in Aspen. There were so many changes that happened. around that time that it was almost overwhelming for guys like my great uncle Tom.
When we were kids, the red brick school was the center of our lives.
So we knew the kids kind of around our age, but we also got to know a lot of the high school kids, which I thought was very advantageous because later in life, the age differences weren't so great, and those guys were friends of ours. We already knew them. I mean, in high school, I used to ride my horse to town to go to the movies. There was a light pole out by the Isis Theater, and I'd tie my horse up to the light pole and go to the movies, come out, and the horse would still be there. Then I'd ride home to Woody Creek. It's hard to believe I did that stuff now. I was like a hotshot high school football player and had a good run. You know, I set a bunch of Russian records at the school, and if it hadn't have been for athletics, I'd have probably never gotten through high school. I went up, and I played freshman football at the University of Northern Colorado. I really got turned off by that lifestyle. I got involved in the English Lit department, and I was reading books, and I was writing papers, and I was happy. The football coach came to me, and he said, listen, he said, you come out for spring ball and make the team, we'll give you a scholarship. And I said, I got a better idea. Why don't you just give it to somebody else, because I'm not going to do it. And that was the end of the football. Then one day I woke up and I thought, you know, this is crazy business. Why would I want to be an English teacher? So I transferred to CU, got a degree in business administration and marketing, and, you know, used that to the best of my ability to become a ski bum.
Right out of college, I hit town, got a job on the Aspen Mountain Ski Patrol, the dream of a lifetime, which I did for 7 years. Then I thought I should join the real world, went to work for my Uncle Vic, and began a career in the trash business. Worked for BFI, owned a couple of trash companies, and was fortunate enough to retire and do what I really want to do, which is ride my horses and ski.
I started writing letters to the editor, and I guess they had a little punch to them because people kept coming up to me and they'd say, you know, you ought to write a column for the paper. I said, what do you want me to write about? And they said, well, just don't get us sued. I just love it. I haven't missed a column since. I get it all the time from people who haven't visited Aspen in a long while. The question that asks, Jesus, when did the big money take over? What did Brutus earn for slaying Caesar? Did Judas gain financially for betraying Jesus? Was $160,000 worth it in the end to William Hopkins for betraying the rest of the early settlers? Hard to say. He got a street named after himself. When did big money take over Aspen? Officially with B. Clark Wheeler, February 1880. It's not a new idea. Back in the old days, you could take your horse into the Jerome Bar for a beer. As a matter of fact, my horse Drifter's been bugging me to walk by here for a long time, so here we are. You got room for two?
I learned a lot about my dad through his columns, and some of it's a little too much information. He's always got women following him on Facebook, reading his columns, emailing him.
Hey, Susie, how are you?
Fine, how are you? What are you planning on riding into the J Bar or something?
We
or?
just came from there. They wouldn't serve my horse. He's not 21. A horse is better than a dog for attracting good-looking women.
It works.
Yeah, he loves girls. Well, thanks. What is a cowboy exactly? I reckon nobody really knows for certain, although the definition might be similar to that of pornography. You know a cowboy when you see one. A girlfriend of mine refers to cowboys as people with expensive trucks and trailers and no visible means of support. Another friend says she never met a cowboy who wasn't hurt, broke, or both. Still another says she gets a special thrill in finding a pair of dusty cowboy boots parked under her bed in the morning. A few days ago, there was mention in the national news about a 9-year-old girl caught driving her mother's car with the mother in the car. It made me wonder how badly I would have been chastised by the politically correct of the world
for letting my 5-year-old daughter drive my truck while I fed the horses. With the pickup in its lowest 4-wheel drive gear, she'd stand on the seat and steer whichever direction I pointed. By the time she was 10, she could put a 5-speed manual transmission through its paces up or down with flawless precision. She could also take a 16-hand horse over a 3-foot jump without blinking. She's a hell of a cowhand. She can ride a horse really well. I mean, I just love spending time with her. And it's a continuation. I mean, I loved growing up with my granddad, and I loved riding with my dad. And so now my daughter's been exposed to that life, and that's probably the most priceless thing I can offer her. I'm 65 years old. I made the commitment many years ago to stay in Aspen, and I always felt that I'd stay until the magic wore off. And I don't think that's ever going to happen.